Mr. Saladin, and then there's Martin, and you know the chairman of the party, Mr. Ramjatan, as well as the leader on my right, Mr. Trotman, yours truly. Let me immediately read the first part of the press release, which relates to the recent ugly developments we've been witnessing. And we are of the view that violence in all its forms must be denounced and condemned by all. The recent developments of a grenade explosion in Stabroek Market, which realized 1 dead and a number of others injured, the throwing of an unexploded firebomb into the property of Member of Parliament, Mrs. Philomena Sohoy Shuri, and the arson attempts at 2 schools on the east coast of Demerara, all signal very ugly incidents which must be met with outright condemnations. Guyanese across the political class and ethnic divide will all be adversely affected, very directly in some cases and indirectly otherwise. Since its formation in 2005, the Alliance for Change declared its abhorrence of violence. Only too recently, its presidential candidate, Mr. Ramjatan, has pleaded in his New Year's message of 2011 that there be peaceful and free elections and free from violence, those elections. The police force must make a special effort to identify the intellectual authors and perpetrators behind these incidents and to find out whether their activities are part of separate individual scheming or part of a joint enterprise. The AFC is wholly aware that such violence as has started this year will not benefit the public nor the credible opposition forces. It believes that the intellectual authors and the actual perpetrators are the only ones to be the beneficiaries of this violence. Violence in a year when elections are to be held will cause tremendous fear to be driven into the minds of electors, will cause major distractions from the important dominant issues of the day, will create a contrived instability on the political landscape, and in a multi-ethnic society such as ours, do have the ethnic-minded running back into their respective camps and circling the wagon, as it were. So Guyanese then must all ask themselves this question: who in this election year are the beneficiaries of these incidents? The AFC pleads that all Guyana should strive to ensure that this year, 2011, will be a peaceful year.
Thanks. Mr. Martin.
You know, address the issue of the Stabroek vendors.
Martin, before you start, can I just pause? Nazim, you want to take a seat? Thank you. Go ahead.
Ready? No, just a minute. He wants to say. You ready? Go ahead.
The Stabroek vendors. The AFC regards the government's handling of the Stabroek vendors after the grenade explosion as ill-advised and tantamount to burning down the house to find the pig. There is matter in manner as such as bulldozing attitude is not in keeping with the humanism that is required whenever termination of livelihoods is concerned, especially for so many. Even if ministerial pronouncements from Rohi, Ben and Lal are correct, that lawlessness existed there. Such alleged lawlessness must not be countered by executive lawlessness. The AFC notes how the vendors are being booted around and being used like a political football among the threesome, namely the president, the ministers, Rohi, Ben and Lal, and the mayor. The president, in keeping with recent behavior, is playing the role of savior of the vendors, when His Excellency, knowing how he loves to micromanage, was undoubtedly the one who must have instructed the complete demolition of their stalls. There must be a more systemized orderly arrangement for the establishment and enforcement of vending in the city and countrywide, to bring a sense of certainty to the lives of vendors. The arbitrariness where vendors, by virtue of their acquaintance of the authorities, are led to legitimately expect that the stalls will not be removed. And then such a sudden demolition without notice will create anger and hardships and a disequilibrium which inevitably will result in a multiplicity of social ills. The AFC wishes to reiterate, however, that all of this has occurred because jobs are not being created by the government so as to realize purposeful and substantial employ for able-bodied men and women. It is the fight to survive which forces able-bodied persons into being itinerant vendors in areas not benefiting our once beautiful garden city and countrywide.
I will read the one on the chairman's livestock employ. That Steve does have a peeve with matters livestock, no one can deny. But Mr. Suraj Valley must not be too bullish when it comes to matters constitutional. The constitutional reform process of 2000, after serious and lengthy deliberation on the issue, made it clear in its recommendation that, quote, the chairman of the Elections Commission should be full-time, unquote. The Oversight Committee further comment was made to this effect. Quote, the committee considered the interpretation of the description full-time chairman and agreed that it meant that the chairman of the Elections Commission would be prohibited from engaging in any other form of employment, unquote. These exact words by the framers were then drafted into Article 161, Subarticle 1 of the Constitution by a constitutional amendment number 2 of 2000. By any method of interpretation, be it literal or purposive, these words must mean what they say. And any application of that meaning must instruct the chairman that he must desist from other employ, which obviously is what chairmanship of the Livestock Development Authority is. The employ as chairmanship of the Livestock Authority is not negative by the smallness of the stipend, nor that it is directed to charity and not to the chairman's pocket. To postulate that this is not so will obviously bring into question whether his chairmanship of GCOM is employ at all. Even if you were to take the entirety of his salary from GCOM, which is very substantial, and give it to charity, this does not negative it being employment with GCOM. But there is a more fundamental prescription which Mr. Steve Suraj Valley must adhere to as chairman of such an office, the operations and decisions of which are as sensitive as it gets. This fundamental prescription is an adherence to constitutional propriety. Even if for some strange reason legal advice or a court ruling may hold that there is nothing constitutionally wrong or there is no constitutional violation committed, the chairman ought to know that there is everything constitutionally improper about such employ at the Livestock Authority in the context of all the circumstances here. Just like the principle adhered to by judges who must see that justice not only being done, but ensure that it appears to be done, so too in the context of an independent chairman of GCOM must there be not only actual independence, but appearances of independence. Even if this rule or convention is nowhere to be found, then for the sake of fair play and justice and avoidance of mistrust in our electoral process, let us commence to create one for this purpose and in these circumstances.